welcome everybody to the webinar. It is good to see you. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Mark Edwards. Mark, how are you? How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. Loving life, feeling good. Got beautiful weather here lately, so it's been a good few months for sure.
Yeah, man. It should be beautiful in Bentonville, Arkansas right now, right?
Yeah, the leaves are finally starting to turn, so it's really pretty to take a drive to the mountains here for sure.
Nice. And yeah. So today we're gonna assemble big Wi-Fi, and not just like the typical what people maybe mean by big Wi-Fi. It could be large public venues, which we see more and more, and we talk to more and more of those people as well. But this time we're not gonna talk large public venues, but we're gonna talk about large venues like distribution centers and warehouses. But we're also gonna talk about large scale in terms of global distribution. And Mark has been kind of building and maintaining one of the biggest Wi-Fi networks in the world, so that'll be interesting. Anything we should know? What is that one thing we should know about you and your career, Mark? This is
I mean, I've been
very
doing
big.
Wi-Fi for not quite as long as you, but pretty close, going on 20 years. I spent some time on the vendor side, worked for Symbol, Motorola, just before it got sold off to Zebra. And then I spent about 13 to 14 years at Walmart, working on the wireless infrastructure there. And obviously, you know, built it up from a nice, nice to have to a must have critical, business operations team, tool. So yeah, spent a lot of time doing Wi-Fi and know most of the people on the call. So it's good to see everybody.
Absolutely. And you've also helped out. One could say that many of the features we see in today's Wi-Fi products is actually we can thank you for many of those, especially when it comes to scalability, operation on a large scale, automation. Is that fair to say? You've had a fair impact on the roadmaps of various Wi-Fi products as well.
That's fair to say, but I can't say it's all just market. It helped that I worked at Fortune One, right? So that kind of helped bring the weight to some of these things, and not all of these things were Mark's ideas by any means.
Yeah.
I get to feedback from WOPC and lots of other places where I hear other people talking about things. I'm like, yeah, you know what, that does make sense. Let me go see if I can help get that done.
Absolutely. Yeah, and on the line we have myself as well as Jer Bear and Andrew. Quick introductions, Jerry.
Giriola here. I am based out of the US side of the technical operations of Hamina Wireless, and yeah, kind of represent all the technical stuff happening. And yeah, happy to be in the Q&A here and as well as in chat, helping out throughout the webinar. Andrew, how about yourself?
Hey, Andrew McHale. For those who don't know me out of the UK, I'm really just here to avoid doing my expenses. This seemed like a better use of my time.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all, man? Just ask our COO. He's starting to lose his hair almost, Jussi style these days because of my unpaid. Tommy, I promise to do my expenses, man. I do. I seriously do. Thanks for joining, guys. And yeah, thanks for the audience for joining. So first, what's new with Hamina and what's coming up? And we already touched this, but the big Wi-Fi nerd out called WLPC is happening twice a year for the big conferences. The other one is Prague, which is the EU side of the conference, and it's happening actually next week. Boot camps are starting over the weekend. I'll be very busy on Ferney Munoz's troubleshooting boot camp over the weekend, and then it goes from there. Hamina has several speaker slots. Andrew, are you speaking or are you mostly enjoying the atmosphere?
This will be the first time I've been and I've not had the pressure of speaking, so no running off to my room in breaks to perform, but I
That's
will be helping Joel in the deep dive, whoever's taking the Hamina deep dive.
That's the way to go. And Andrew, you held an amazing speaker slot at WICO UK, which was a good conference a couple of weeks ago, and Dan Jones spoke there as well. I did not, so I had the pleasure of doing what you'll be doing next week, supporting the deep dive and stuff like that. What else is new at Hamina? Thought I'd spill the beans a little bit. I mean, Hamina and Orb are hosting we are hosting an evening event at the Prague, and we may have some joint stuff going on there otherwise as well. And this will be a highly official evening event, as you can see, with the founder of founder of, or that's the CEO of Orb, as well as myself. So welcome anybody who's around Prague to our highly official evening event next week. And you can see that we also share with the CEO of Orb, the network testing company. We share also similar styling clothing, and as you can see, that's Nicolas Cage styled clothing as well. But can you see what's there? Can you see what's there on the top right hand side of the screen? Anybody?
That's the air magnet.
That's an I Love Air Magnet shirt right there.
That's awesome.
That Dilip Advani, when he was working at Air Magnet, gave me, and that should be framed, to be honest. So some of the other things that are new with Hamina and actually released, I think today, right? Jerry, Andrew, help me out. Wasn't Catalyst Center? I mean, HP Aruba, a new central integration is now two ways, like live and export and stuff like that. Ruckus export, I think, went out today. The live stuff for Ruckus has been already around for a while, so checking your live heat map stuff like that. And Catalyst Center came out today as well. Catalyst Center integration, which means integrating with your on-premises Catalyst Center. Already, if you've had Catalyst and Meraki visibility, you can access it through our Meraki integration. But and let's take a quick look at that before we move into big Wi-Fi, because this is kind of a little bit maybe related to big Wi-Fi as well. So I'll just create a new project here, and I'll go, instead of like starting the network plan, I'll just go live. And then I'll go, and this is shipping today. You just need to enable it from beta from somewhere here. Just what I want to do is I'll connect to Cisco Catalyst Center, and this is an on-premises Catalyst Center running somewhere. I'll put in my API credentials on the Catalyst Center once, and then I'll select one of my sites, let's say the Fifth Avenue. I'll select the maps, and there we go. We can then connect into the system as well. So we're starting to flow Catalyst Center data into Hamina, and then Hamina also builds a three-dimensional model out of it automatically. You do not need any walls or anything like that. As long as you have APs placed on the floor plans in Catalyst Center, that's all there's to it. Then Hamina will kind of figure out the walls and the elevators and things of that nature. And you'll get like real-time statistics of what's happening. And this is the coverage right now, for example, of this AP. These are the properties of this AP right now. This AP has one client connected to it, things of that nature. And then let's see, what else do we have? If you want to see your like channel utilization currently, if you want to see your interference levels, like how good of a job did RRM do? This is a test lab, so it's a bit crowded. But also if you want to see like live client devices, I want to see how that Think Center, Lenovo Think Center is doing right now. And we can pull the statistics of that device in real time out of that device. So how is that device doing right at this very moment? So that's for an example of a Catalyst Center integration. So no more is it just cloud to cloud like Juniper Mist and HP Aruba Next Gen Central and Meraki and all of that. It's also other stuff. And then we have Bob Hammond has raised his hand. Intentionally or not, we will find out. Maybe he wants to speak. Maybe he wants to write on the chat. Bob, if you have a question, please write it on the chat. And on Jerry's and Andrew's mercy, we will also let you speak. Also, when it comes to big Wi-Fi, you need to design and deploy it at scale. I don't know if, Mark, you ever had a chance to try this out. You certainly saw much of this, but kind of how Hamina, this is very recent too, but how Hamina automatically constructs kind of based on just, you don't need, like, I know, Mark, you often had your hands on, DWG or CAD drawings, but if you don't even have a CAD drawing, Hamina automatically builds your data center racks. It automatically builds your warehouse shelves using friggin' AI. Have you seen this stuff in action?
Yeah, so I've played with it a little bit, but I haven't had a chance to really dig in and try to operationalize it to where we start using it at scale. So, but I was definitely impressed, and it did better than I expected.
Yeah, man. Let's say you're deploying, I don't know, like hundreds of sites or something like that. That's when it becomes handy. Let's say we're doing Mark Smart. Anybody? I'm sure you've heard that a few times, but even at the risk of that, let's put in, I don't know, a retail like some kind of a JPEG of a retail store floor plan, and very low res, downloaded from Google Images, stuff like that. There's the retail shelves, and check this baby out. Like it just builds the whole thing based on a JPEG automatically, and then you're good to start designing the network with your tool of choice. So all I'm saying is drawing walls is done, right? But refining walls, refining shelf material, stuff like that, and kind of fixing the problems with AI, that's still, of course, ongoing, but it's getting pretty darn good already. Like this is where AI is going, and it's only getting better. Anyhow, just something for large scale, like imagine, not that any of us would, but doing thousands of stores or stuff like that. You know, one last thing I'll mention about Hamina before we jump into the actual topic of the day is when you're considering cloud-based solutions, couple of certificates come to mind: SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001, and then you need to have separate EU and US cloud. And Hamina has all of the above. And Mark, at least for us, it's helped out in the vendor onboarding processes. Big houses often have quite strenuous legal compliance requirements, stuff like that, and these really help out, kind of push the cloud-based tools through.
Yeah, absolutely. Going through security review and having this document to put in front of them, assuming it's current, is definitely a fast track to getting those security approvals done, because they see the certification, they're like rubber stamp, you're good to go.
Exactly right. And what is the URL? Is it hamina.com/trust or something like that, where we have all the compliance information and all of that? Maybe Gerbear or Andrew can put that on the chat. But let's move on and get to the topic of the day more thoroughly. So, automating Wi-Fi with thousands of sites. Mark, if you had to name like the most important thing that comes to automating your Wi-Fi when you're dealing at scale, to you, what would that be? You can also name several, but what would be the number one thing that comes to mind that you can't live without?
You're probably gonna be surprised with this answer, but I think it's good people. It's having a good team, because if you don't have a solid foundation, if you don't have a solid, engineering team that understands what you're trying to do, understands the challenges of running these kind of sites, you can't do it by yourself, right? So I think the most important and critical part is having a good team, which, beyond that, I think the next big thing is probably cloud powered. Being able to manage those sites at scale, not have to be concerned with I only have this many, I can only put this many APs on this controller, or and even cloud comes with some variability, right? Not all clouds are created the same.
Mhm.
There are some opportunities with some of the solutions out there where there's still a limit, and then you end up having to run multiple instances, which leads to config drift and those kind of things, right? But I think the biggest thing is cloud powered and API first. Being able to automate, being able to build things, not only tools that you may use every day, but building something ad hoc to go collect data or to go push out changes, firmware upgrades, those kind of things. That to me, those are the key three things that are a must in order to operate anything at scale these days.
And when you say team, what would be the top characteristics that you look for in your team members? If you had to pick three team members to your team, and each one of them had one skill, what would you go with? I know
Well, I
I'm
would say
guessing.
I need somebody that's a solid that understands Wi-Fi wireless in and out, right? So I need a CWNE type candidate that can absolutely run the wireless network.
Okay, that rules
Um,
me out. I was gonna apply for work with you, but okay, there goes.
the second one may rule you out too. So the second one is at least the second one rules me out. Is being able to code, right? Being able to write Python, being able to build tools to take advantage of the APIs that are available.
Dude, I have two
That's
strikes.
absolutely critical. Um, and then I think the third one would be somebody who has maybe a blend of other skills. So understanding client perspective, understanding, wired networking, those kind of aspects. I think it's absolutely critical that you have someone that understands the rest of the network, because Wi-Fi doesn't work by itself.
Yeah.
You definitely need somebody on the team, whether it's on your team or it's a sister team. You've got to have, expertise in those areas. Otherwise, you're just going in circles.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good mix. That's a really good mix, and it's very, very hard to find all three, especially if you're looking for like a professional software developer, because that's already like very much a full-time job. You can probably like sometimes you find unicorn CWNEs that are also really good with customers and stuff like that. But finding all three in one person, including like a professional grade software developer, it's very, very tough.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But that's good. I was out by three, just missed it by three criteria. Uh, so, so how do you manage anyway this kind of like multi-use case enterprise network, and especially focusing on the wireless side of things, but in general, like what comes to it, and why is it a different animal compared to a your run-of-the-mill, let's say, even if it's a larger single deployment? What about this kind of global thousands or tens of thousands of sites type of an animal? How do you
Yeah.
manage that, and how is the management different?
Yeah, I think it's definitely different because, if I think about the previous experience that I've had, I didn't just have a retail shop, right? I also had a distribution center. I also had carpeted campus space environment, and all of those requirements and coverage and number of clients and, most critical devices, all that changes for each one of those. So what's really critical is to have the ability within the Wi-Fi vendor or the software tool to create, it's commonly called like an MSP, but I need to be able to create, it's important to have different distinctions for those different types of formats, because then I can keep all those sites together in that single environment, that single org, if you will,
Mhm.
in order to manage it separately. So I can create my templates for, a retail format inside of one org. Then I have another org where I have a completely different template, maybe even different hardware that I run in a distribution center. And then the same thing for the corporate campus and other things like, I've had to do pop-up, wireless networks where, hey, we're going to this place and we're setting up a tent and we need Wi-Fi. Um, I even done venue Wi-Fi. We have hosted some very large events with, 35,
Wow.
40,000 people. And, inside of that, we basically go build our own network because we don't use the in-house network. And so we have to, managing all those is critical. We want to keep those configurations separate. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to manage all inside of one, location, if you will, or one
Got it, got
organization.
it. So what you have is in a way these like config templates for different environments, retail, distribution center, warehouse, events, and then they hopefully work for what, 95% of the cases. And then how often do you have to do per site type of tuning, and how would that look like? What would you set up in the template, and where would you run into manual site tuning typically?
So that would be another organization. So I have, a store org, a distribution center org, an enterprise org, and then other. And
Uh-huh.
that's where we go
Okay.
manage those kind of manage those one-off type locations. Because, you're right, there are situations where there's some sites that don't fit, the exact bill, or maybe it's a hybrid of a store slash distribution center. So there's a combination that's happening inside of the building. So there's got to be somewhere to manage those and manage them in a little bit more one-off type format. So kind of grouping those and keeping those away from the rest of the environment is like I said, critical.
And I would imagine like those templates, like you cannot do manual channel planning at this scale, or it would be very hard, right? And it would be impossible to maintain because it's a moving target, like a retail store or small or large store. It's a moving target, and almost any Wi-Fi environment is. Is it fair to say that it's always dynamic, always radio resource management? How do you deal with channeling power? Any good best practices that apply to like large Wi-Fi, but can also apply to other sites? Any?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure this has been said 1,000 times before, but RRM and auto channel planning is great, but you can't just turn it on, right? You have to build those constraints based on your requirements to keep that, solution in check, if you will. If you have devices that don't support DFS, for example, you need to make sure you exclude those channels from the auto planning. If you have devices that or if you have any other kind of restrictions, outdoor restrictions, or perhaps you may have other third party solutions inside of your building, and you
Mhm.
may need to be able to reserve some channels for them. So, managing that is critical, and you can't just turn it on and cross your fingers it's going to work. It definitely takes some skill and some understanding of what you're trying to accomplish with RM and setting those guardrails to make sure it delivers on what you want.
Got it. Got it. And how have you seen RRM develop in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years? How would you say 15 years ago RRM worked, and how does it work today? How much?
It's definitely night and day difference, and I think there's probably some nuances between vendors, but I think they're pretty much all in the same place today. But yeah, to your point, I mean, 10 years ago, the RM was basically, all right, I'm going to start on channel 36, and then I'm going to see if there's anybody there, and if not, I'm going to go to channel 40. So
Mhm.
it's definitely become a lot more dynamic. And we're starting to see vendors using neighbor radio information to bring that into the calculation. They're looking at client performance and how clients are doing to bring that into the overall decision making process. And beyond that, I think they've gotten a lot better about not ad hoc doing the changes so quickly, which again kind of gets into building those guardrails. But we're seeing a little bit more intelligence and thought put into those channels that AI has enabled to make those decisions even cleaner.
So let's talk about AI in a second. But before that, speaking of RRM, so how often are you seeing RRM act on channel interference, and how often do you have to deal with non-Wi-Fi interference, or does RRM just work its way around it, kind of?
Well, RM works great, but there's absolutely limitations. Generally speaking, if it's not a reaction to like a DFS event or extreme, interference, those changes may happen like once a day.
Yeah.
And usually it's during the off hours and again using some intelligence there, understanding when the off hours are at a location are critical because it might be a building that has a third shift help desk, right? Where during the day it's not very busy, but at night it is. So understanding when to make those changes is also critical. So I'd say about on average once a day. Absolutely have seen all kinds of interference from non-Wi-Fi devices. Seen it with Bluetooth devices that are not configured properly and just going crazy. I've seen everything. Wireless speakers that are set up for a display at like a Sam's Club location or something like that, where
Yeah.
it's just kind of sitting out on the shelf and it's turned on because they want customers to interact with it. Um, yeah, there's definitely lots of things that can interfere. And RM generally does a good job of getting away from it, but it's not 100%,
Yeah.
especially because a lot of these devices may be channel hopping themselves.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I feel like RRM has gotten really good at that too, but you still probably want to have that spectrum analyzer handy for those
Absolutely.
outlier cases where it doesn't take it. Jerbear Allah has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was just thinking with the RM piece, where does 6 gigahertz play into that? Is 6 gigahertz help with that in the sense of, RM is generally because of channel reuse, right? And not being able to, have enough spectrum throughout that environment. Does 6 gigahertz kind of alleviate some of that? Does it make it more complicated? What's your thoughts?
So very early on in the stage of 6 gigahertz, real live deployments. But overall, it seems to be pretty effective. And obviously, we have more channels. So 6 gigahertz is absolutely a hero, right, when it comes to additional spectrum for us. But I haven't seen any real problems with RRM yet. Everything seems to be pretty smooth, especially having the number of channels that we have available here in the US anyway. That I haven't run across any challenges with it yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
seems to work just as well as it does in 5 gigahertz.
Yeah, yeah, at least, and yeah, 6 GHz, no DFS problems, things of that
Right.
nature.
I think one thing that remains to be seen is once we start seeing some non-Wi-Fi 6 GHz interferers,
Mhm.
that'll be interesting to see how RM reacts to that. I mean, in theory, it should be the same logic that we're using in
Yeah,
5 GHz, right? It
you're
should just
right.
be rinse and repeat, but it'll be interesting if that's really how it works.
Absolutely. So still on the AI side of things, you mentioned AI driven RRM. What else? Where else have you seen AI substantially help you out? And it's hard to say what's AI, of course, in the products, right? Because often a combination of heuristics, AI, whatever, like traditional methods and machine learning. But what do you think? What's been kind of helping you out the most?
I mean, obviously, the AI that we're seeing in the vendor hardware software solutions that are coming out from pure Wi-Fi perspective, and I think some of the big key wins that I've seen with AI itself is really kind of bubbling up some of those problems, especially if you've got thousands of sites. I can't go look at every single site every single morning and see what's broken,
Yep.
right? So I need the solution or at least the ability to query the data and build my own solution if I have to get that data and bubble up things that are anomalous. That hey, the site yesterday was running, this AP is generally got 35 clients. Today it's got zero. Well, that's a problem, right? So something's not right. That doesn't make any sense. So, but being able to see those things and bubble those things up to the top, so that we can take action on those, and whether that action is opening up a ticket for the knock to go do something, or whether that's perhaps an automated fix like fixing a port configuration or maybe bouncing an AP or something like that. I think those are absolutely some of the biggest benefits I've seen from AI so far. Obviously, you see, some of the stuff we're starting to see come out from Hamina and being able to auto draw walls. I mean, that's a big one, right? We spend a lot of money to a third party to go in and basically build those drawings for us and do those designs. So having the ability to automate that is going to be a big win for sure because again, it's all if it saves money, it's even better.
Yeah, and it's not just the walls, it's the shelves, like distribution centers, warehouses, stuff like that. Most of the drawing actually is the shelves. It's not the walls anymore. Hey,
Exactly.
Andrew, how is the chat looking like?
Took a moment there to get the mute button. It's frantic.
Excellent, excellent. Keep it frantic, baby.
First for me was that Mark actually went in the QA section and answered some questions while you were kind of opening the call, which I've not seen before. I was like, where'd that question go? I was gonna put it to Mark, and he'd already jumped on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Um, so Joanna's been waiting a while, but I think this is a good place to ask it. Is basically you always know what hardware for the APs and the switching routing stack you were using, Mark.
Yeah, so it's a mixed environment. So we use a lot of Juniper. We have some Cisco equipment as well, and then we're always testing something new, right? So whether that's Extreme or I hear Netgear has an enterprise business. I'm curious to see what that looks like. But yeah, I mean it's a big Juniper Cisco shop overall. But we definitely have still have some legacy deployments out there with like Extreme, some of the old like Motorola stuff for like the Wing 5, Wing 4, if anybody knows what that stuff is. That we still have some of that in the environment that hopefully will get replaced here soon. But that stuff takes time and obviously needs money for investment. And with the economy where it is, sometimes the belts are getting tighter as far as what we're able to go spend money on. So we got to use those dollars wisely.
And you were like some of your international affiliates were using other brands as well, such as Aruba and stuff like that as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the UK is using Aruba, and then we're seeing some of that in the China market as well. So there is a mix, a little bit more of a mix internationally. A lot of times we don't do those designs and have our hands on that. We kind of work in more of a consulting fashion. So they reach out to us for, hey, what should we do and where should we go? Those kind of things, and we give them that guidance. And then of course, when it breaks, we're the first ones they call, of course. So.
That's part of the
So,
job. Jeremy,
Joanna had a follow-up question saying, what platform is used for the management of the hardware? I presume you use the vendor's own platform for the APs, but maybe in the switch world, there's a few more
that's a good
third-party
question.
things.
That's a good
That is a
question.
good question.
You've
And the
spoken
answer
about it at
is
a webinar as well, haven't you, Mark? A
I
few years
have,
ago.
yeah. I tried to find that webinar the other day and I couldn't find it. Um, but yeah, so we actually homegrown our own solution. So yes, we are leveraging tools from the vendors themselves, specifically their APIs. But we've actually built out our own platform to where we're using that to manage everything at scale. So we have our own tool that our third-party vendors have access to that can come in and say, hey, AP1 is this MAC address, AP2 is this MAC address. I'll fill out that worksheet, if you will, to tell us where it's plugged in from a switch and port perspective. And we put that in through our own API system that we built internally. And that goes in and does all the configurations for us, creates the sites, configures ports. So both wired and wireless is running through that same tool.
That's fascinating. And Jerbear, I see you have your hand
Yeah, it
raised.
made me think of a common question that I get. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Mark, is around just, yeah, does the hardware matter, right? From specifically thinking of like on the RF side and the Wi-Fi side, even like within the same vendor, they've got all these different tiers of access points, right? From their low end tiers to these high end like flagship APs. In your types of, these large scale environments, does that make a significant difference? And then another question that I get kind of related to that is, which vendor is the best, like those kinds of things. So I'm just curious,
Don't
like from
go
your
there,
perspective,
Jerbear.
yeah,
Don't
without
go
getting
there.
into without getting,
I,
controversial here, I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts around like, yeah, does it make a difference? Is RF just RF? Is Wi-Fi just Wi-Fi? Doesn't make a difference what vendor. Obviously, we started to go down the trail of like even the platform management side, that's a piece of the equation. So yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are
I,
around kind of all of that.
I think hardware does still matter. I refuse to say, what my favorite is. I have my opinions, but that's all they are is opinions. But absolutely, I think hardware is still relevant, and I say that because we've even within some of, like you mentioned, with the flagship AP versus the cost of optimized AP. We've definitely seen differences in those pieces of hardware. And when it comes to runtime, when it comes to having problems with, oops, we didn't put enough memory in this AP. We had some, manufacturing problems with this batch of AP. So I think hardware does matter. And I know a lot of times that, there's a thought that, why the hardware itself could be commoditized, right? That it doesn't really matter with the hardware. You just need the good software to run on top of it. And there may be some truth to that for sure. But I think hardware does matter, and having good, well-built, solid hardware is critical, especially in environments like a distribution center where there's lots of dirt and dust and outdoor APs where they're getting rain and sun and all those things. So I think hardware matters for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But is it fair to say that, at least for me, I'd take robust and bug-free over a few more spatial streams any day of the week. But of course, spatial
100%.
streams matter as well when you get to high density and stuff like that.
100%. 100%.
Or,
Yeah.
or
If you
IoT
talk about the
radios,
difference,
right?
what's that?
Or IoT radios, like the higher end APs tend to come with other radios than just like the Wi-Fi radios. Does that play into the decision of like which model AP that you might select?
That it does, and I think that depends on your use case. But I have absolutely leveraged those radios inside of AP inside of the existing APs, specifically with BLE and taking that BLE radio and turning it into a BLE access method for other types of things like shelf tags and whatnot.
Yeah, I remember one Mark saying to me a few years ago, like, "Give me the spectrum, whatever spectrum you have, I'll use all of it."
Exactly.
Certainly, I guess you use all of it. So on that spectrum thought, real quickly, private 5G, it kind of started the hype started maybe early COVID days and slightly before, but then it's kind of flattened, and we've faced realism of like cost and deployment, like ease or difficulty of deployment and stuff like that, and it's kind of finding its place. What do you think in the retail, warehousing, distribution centers? Any use cases there that you think sticks for private 5G?
I think the one big thing for private 5G specifically is I think it offers a lot of opportunity for outdoor coverage, right? Because you can cover so much further without putting APs on poles and meshing everything in. So I do think there's tremendous value there, and that's probably the most common use case that you hear. But I'm seeing a very big play for the indoor coverage, and not necessarily for the private side of it, but for what's called neutral host,
Oh yeah.
where essentially you partner with AT&T or T-Mobile, Verizon, and then you actually have their customers' devices roam onto those radios inside to provide that 4 bars of coverage throughout the building.
Yep.
And that's a seamless roam. The customer doesn't, the end user doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to click on the Wi-Fi, or obviously there's no captive portal or anything like that. Their phone still says T-Mobile at the top. They have no idea that they've actually roamed onto that infrastructure, and all that traffic's encrypted, so there's no way to look at that traffic or anything like that. So it's pretty robust, and it solves a problem that DAS is very bulky and big and expensive. And not to say that the private 5G radios are not expensive, but I think we're seeing a lot of things with some of the vendors where they're starting to take out some of the stuff in the middle, like the controller, if you will, or the edge device, and start dropping that traffic directly onto the switch port, just like we do with Wi-Fi APs today.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. For example, Meter has already announced they've gone big on their bet on neutral host, and
Yeah.
there's some other vendors as well. That'll be interesting to
Yeah,
see.
we've tested it out. We've had a couple facilities with at least two of the carriers, two of the big three, and it works great. I mean, obviously there's some times where you're kind of at the back edge of the building where you might kind of roam back and forth, but I think that's just a matter of tuning the solution and ensuring that the customer gets the best experience, or even the associate, right? Whoever, anybody that's got a T-Mobile SIM is going to have that great coverage, or Verizon or whomever.
And what's your experience with PassPoint?
Lots of experience with PassPoint. Probably about 1,000 locations today that are running that. It seems to work fairly well. I know Android sometimes has some challenges where it'll actually interact with the customer, say, "Hey, do you want to connect it?" Blah blah blah. So I think PassPoint is great for offloading data. I
Hmm.
don't know that PassPoint is great for voice.
Why not?
Because generally, at least on an iPhone anyway, you have to go in and you have to go select that you want to use voice over Wi-Fi
Ah,
calling,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
if you don't do that, then you're not going to provide the customer everything they need. It's not going to help you with SMS, which I know is kind of pretty much a thing in the past these days, with Android finally doing the RCS solution and the integration there. So honestly, at the end of the day, I could see PassPoint and Neutral Host being in the same building with offloading any kind of heavy data usage over the wireless over the Wi-Fi network, and then
Hmm.
any voice traffic going over the cellular network, if you will, the private network.
Yeah.
It's critical for things like public safety too. I mean, being able to make a 911 call when something happens, somebody falls, whatever the case may be, having coverage is critical to be able to place that call.
Very good, very good. Thanks for the insight. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about, like, you have to deal with a lot of vendors when you manage a network of that size, including these pain in the butt Wi-Fi tools vendors, but other ones too. So any tips for managing the vendors and managing the relationships, and how does that even work?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said relationships because I think people matter, right? And having someone that you can talk to and that you trust and that is, going to be honest with you, I think is critical. I've had plenty of vendors come in and give me the smoke and mirrors, and then you start asking detailed questions, and you found out, yeah, okay, this is just smoke and mirrors. You wrote this on the piece of paper, but that's not how it really works. So I think what I would say is important is to challenge them on things that they say that they provide and solutions that they offer. If it doesn't make sense, ask them how does that work? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? I've definitely uncovered a lot of things by ensuring that I understand completely how they're delivering something, not just that they
Mhm.
can deliver it. Understanding the mechanics of what they're doing is absolutely critical. That's probably the biggest thing. The second thing I would say is to make sure to always talk to more than one. Don't take the first one. Don't even if it's a great guy or it's your buddy. Sometimes you have to tell your buddy have to have hard conversations with your friends, right? But absolutely talk to as many vendors in that space as you can, because at the end of the day, you're going to learn more about said technology if you don't already know it, well. And you're going to find out there's a lot of these solutions are very similar, but there are nuances that are important that you have to kind of flesh out of them, like the scale question we talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I find the same. And speaking of honesty, and kind of telling the honest truth, I remember we kind of grew to be friends over my previous career. And then when I was leaving Juniper Mist and starting Hamina, I asked you, Mark, for advice. And I don't know if you remember, but I
I
showed you some
do.
of my plans, and you were like, yeah, it's okay. And at that point, I was like, okay, pivot time. The company is like 2 days old, and I need to pivot already. So really appreciate that, because our product
Yeah.
would have been quite different and to the totally wrong direction had it not been for discussions like that. So that's much appreciated. So let's say we want to, like, as I count myself in that bucket selfishly, although I'm not. But let's say as Wi-Fi engineers, uh, what is the one or two skills that you would need to have? And you said already some of those, but to reiterate, like, as a wireless network engineer, how should you? What is the absolute essentials you should know to deal with large scale Wi-Fi?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on your definition of large scale Wi-Fi. But in terms of dealing with hundreds or tens or even thousands of sites, I think it's critical to understand if the nuances and the difference between those different types of locations. For example, a neighborhood market, which is a small grocery type format for Walmart, and a Sam's Club are completely different type formats. And you can't just take the kind of same thing that I did here and go do it there. You have to understand the differences in the environment, the differences in perhaps devices,
Yeah.
and absolutely ceiling heights are different. I mean, all these things come into play, and you have to be able to again manage those effectively and create those buckets, if you will, of configurations that apply to that particular format or that particular location, that versus the other sites.
Uh, and and what was I gonna say? What should you know? I mean, it almost sounds like you said, like, these different types of environments, and then 10 properties of these environments. At least for me, it's like you cannot replace going on site. Like, you were in a product role kind of later in your career as well, and I see myself the same way as a product person. But like, nothing replaces actually going there on site as frequent as possible to feel, see, sense the environment, talk to the people that are actually, doing this, talk to the local IT people, assess, kind of like, understand what is their skill level, how much can I offload to the local people, okay, who's your boss, what can they do, what are the interdependencies, all of this kind of stuff. Like, unless you're also out there, you really cannot know what's going on. And then
Absolutely.
yeah, you cannot manage the scale either.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think I've brought up people, and I'm glad you brought them up too, because that's critical as well, is talking to the actual end users,
Yeah.
not the person that happened to call in the ticket, and then you call back and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, So getting there and understanding directly what the end users, whether that's a customer or whether that's an associate, is 1,000% critical. And not just going there once, but making sure that you're doing it on some kind of regular cadence.
Yep.
Whether that's, for us, it was, hey, we'd go to a particular market and we would move all across the United States so that we're talking to different people in different, areas, because the challenges that a store in Texas has is probably not the same challenges that a store in Massachusetts has.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
understanding those nuances is critical. And then understanding the business, right? What's the business goals? What are we trying to deliver? Where do we want what is the business hoping as an outcome? Because if you don't know what the outcome is expected to be, then you're not going to ever be able to deliver what they want, especially not in a very timely or cost-effective manner.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. What's the definition of good, and then heading towards that? Jerbear, Andrew, anything on the chat side of things? I see it's still blowing up, still going crazy. Anything of note?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions. I don't know, Andrew, if you want to kind of prioritize some of those. I know you flagged a couple of them.
Yeah, this is going back to when we were talking about managing the network, but JW asked if you use Netbox at all for managing of hardware.
So we started using some NetBox for the wired environment. That was just got started this past summer. So we're still very early on and only a certain subset of devices. I think specifically they're looking at the wired devices in our data centers. But we are looking at that as potentially a tool that could replace the tool that we already built. Or maybe our tool will just integrate with it. So it's definitely something on the horizon, but nothing on the wireless space yet.
Yeah, it seems like don't try and build everything yourself. Where it makes sense, integrate with another product that does it better, and then focus on what you're good at is something we have in common.
Right.
So Brad was asking again, we were talking about kind of hardware, your opinion on the fattening of access points to give them basically more compute as we require them to do more. Any 8x8 deployed Walmart?
No, no 8x8 deployed. And yeah, I mean, obviously prices are only continuing to go up. I think there's opportunity for someone to probably disrupt things and try to do more with less radios. Like, I think the latest APs that are coming out have got like four Wi-Fi radios in them, not to mention, any IoT radios. So I think there's probably somewhere to optimize some of that and really implement it smarter. I know there's an ability to run like dual 5 gigahertz and dual 6 gigahertz and those kind of things, which is cool, but I personally I've never really been a big fan of it. We've used it in a couple of spot locations, but we actually went and manually configured those changes, right, in order to support that. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's no doubt that things are going to get more compute, things are going to get more memory, costs are going to go up. But I think there's ability there. I think there's room to optimize some of those radio designs and perhaps even with that some of the compute and power behind it to kind of optimize that to where maybe we start seeing a flattening of cost versus a continual rising of cost.
Yeah, and it's a combo, right? It's also the subscriptions, and like there's so much happening in the cloud. So you have to streamline the hardware, but at the same time, you have to run a pretty tight ship when it comes to cloud compute as well. Tell you from experience that AI inference is no cheap thing, and it takes some quite geniuses to optimize that as well. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad you said cloud costs because that's obviously something that's critical, right? And again, not all vendors are the same in this space, right? So I think there's one other piece of advice if you're dealing with a Wi-Fi vendor is to challenge them on those licensing costs and those software costs because I get there is a cost like you just mentioned for doing your AI work and those kind of things, but so some vendors seem to be very proud of that and like to charge a lot of money for it, and they're not paying, and that's probably where they're making a lot of the, a lot of their profit comes from. But especially in a place like retail where we're operating on very thin margins, it's important to optimize those costs as much as possible.
yeah, retail, hospitality, that kind of stuff. Um, so we already talked about Wi-Fi vendors and stuff like that. So speaking of personal things, what do you wish you had automated sooner, like personally, or is there skill that you wish you had learned sooner with regards to like managing this kind of massive deployment stuff like that? Not that you've ever failed in anything, but
Yeah.
we're
So
all
I
perfect on this side of the cameras, right?
And for me, it's not just sooner. It's still a skill set that I don't have, which is being able to operate Python and use APIs. It's something that I've taken classes and I understood it and started using it, but then because of my role, I wasn't using it every day, and it's definitely like one of those skills that if you don't use it, you forget it.
Yeah.
And so that's something I wish I had stayed sharper on. But spent my own time on it if I had to. But I just, it's a skill set that I lack that I think a new wireless engineer coming into the world today, it's a must have.
Yeah.
At least basic understanding and being able to do basic things. You don't have to go write, the solution that we built to automate all of our installs, right? You don't need to be able to do that from day one, but you have to be able to leverage APIs to go just go pull data,
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
clients or number of radios, how many radios are offline around, just simple stuff like that. Being able to interact with those APIs is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and APIs are forgiving in a sense that ChatGPT, vibe coding, all of that are pretty forgiving when it comes to that. They're pretty good at that, actually. So you can get quite a lot done also with the help of AI. You don't
You
have to
and
be.
you And you have to know how to use the AI tools too, right? I mean,
Exactly.
you don't just go day one and say, "Hey, write me a script for XYZ," and it works, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to work with the AI agent in
Yeah,
order
yeah,
to
absolutely.
get
You
what
need
you
to know
want
the
out of it.
fundamentals of the networking side of things, of the API side of things, and of the AI side of things, or large language, like these LLM chatbot type of things to get something out of it. So speaking of this, any blunders that hit you big time, or stuff like that? Only things that you can safely tell, but is there any?
Yeah. The first one that comes to my mind, and it has to do with cloud and being cloud powered and being able to make changes to lots of sites at once. And this actually wasn't necessarily a blunder, and it wasn't mine. It was one of the engineers on the team, but it wasn't even necessarily her fault. It was because of how the UI interacted with the end user and the environment. That we went to go make a change, and it had lots of sites in there, and we were just adding a site to it. And when you click save, well, it hadn't finished repopulating everything yet, and she went to another page because it said save completed. Well, what happened in the back end is it actually ended up unconfiguring like 1,000 sites and turning off a captive portal across the entire place, or not captive portal, I'm sorry, Passpoint off all those sites. And so, and we didn't know it until somebody called in and complained about it. We started getting complaints, right? And so, yeah, there's definitely big cloud, big management, is definitely a double-edged sword that you have to be very careful and diligent about. Uh, Doing templating, creating, we implemented template versions so that we can slowly roll things out. So, not every site's running version one and we just go to version two. We
Yeah.
take 100 sites and we give it a week and make sure things have a time to bake. So, me personally, the one big blunder I did, which it wasn't large scale, but it was a distribution center, was making a wired change that is not my wheelhouse. But going in and thinking I was adding a VLAN to the trunk port going up to the core switch, and instead I added that VLAN, but I didn't use the add command. So all the other VLANs got dropped off, lost communication to the site. Luckily, I could phone a friend and get somebody on from the wired side who's able to come in on the back side to the other router and fix it. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely definitely focus on what you're good at, and if you have other people who are good at those things, just let them take care of that work for you.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Um, okay, that's it. I mean, remember at Prague we have the evening event. But yeah, yeah. I mean, any questions from the audience for Mark or for anybody
Yeah,
else? What else?
there was a good one from Jonathan around private 5G for indoor, considering using private 5G for actually wireless backhaul for the access points. Yeah, I don't know, have you explored doing anything like that before, or would that ever make sense in certain situations?
We absolutely have explored that before. We didn't we implemented it at a small scale just as a test. But if I think about it now, I would say it depends. But you're essentially replacing one wireless technology for another. If I mean maybe if you can't do mesh because it's so far away or there's too many hops, things like that, it would be a good use case there. But the thing that you have to keep in mind is Wi-Fi is a whole heck of a lot faster than cellular. So you're going to be bound by that speed of that backhaul link, which
Yeah,
will
it's a
probably be, and again,
capacity problem waiting to happen, right?
and it's not symmetrical either, right? It's very heavy on the download, not so much on the upload. So it really depends on your use case, but I think there absolutely is some use cases where I could see it being the right answer. But as a general purpose tool, I don't think it is, at least not yet today.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess somebody from the crowd also on the chat said the same thing, like 2 seconds after the question was asked, like not a feasible idea. Thanks, Derek. Any other questions for Mark, people? We still have him for a few minutes, but before we depart, I'd like to thank the audience and Mark and Jerbear and Andrew for joining. Much appreciated. I feel this was a good one, and special thanks to Miranda Autio for setting everything up and kind of, making sure we actually pull this thing off. So much appreciated. Any
Yes,
any
thank you.
blunders that anybody else has that comes to mind? Jerry, you have anything?
Well, there are several other questions. So if we want to go through some
Oh,
more
great to
Q&A, we'll
dodge your
definitely do
blunder. What?
that. That's exactly. I'm just redirecting. I don't want to
Uh,
talk about my blunders.
Yeah, I hear you. I was trying to think of one that I had that's webinar related, and I remember I once almost threw an AP, almost hit Joel's head with an AP midway through a webinar. He was like, don't throw it," and I just smashed it at him. There was some good excuse, but anyway, yeah, nothing luckily happened. Do not try that at home. But yeah,
So I see Eric asked a question in here about would you consider any part of the business as an incubator of ideas for other areas, for example, scan and go at Sam's, and how you architect those reads. So absolutely 1,000% yes. We absolutely, and we don't, not even just from a networking or technology perspective, but the business does that type of thing for their engagement with the customers and interaction. So for the scan and go is a really good example. Scan and Go went to Sam's Club and it became very big, so big that there are some locations now that are getting remodeled or just opening where that's the only option. There is no register at the front. It is Scan and Go only, and so we actually have that. They've taken that solution and actually put it as part of the Walmart Plus thing. So if you're a Walmart Plus subscriber, you can also use Scan and Go. It's a little bit different than it is at the Sam's Club, but you go through and scan everything as you put it in your cart with your personal device in the app, and then you go, scan a register and basically interact with the register very briefly, and then you're out the door. So absolutely, and that's just one example. There are multiple examples of that all across the board, including like home delivery. That started really at scale at Walmart first, and then now it's available at Sam's Club, and you can even do like 3 hours or less type stuff at Sam's Club as well. So there's definitely a solution that, and so the technology is exact same way. We might go do Wi-Fi 7, for example, in one format, get it out there in a few locations, let it bake, test it, and interact with it before it goes to another location. Uh,
that makes
like
sense.
like distribution centers are always last. What do? We go do in a store first because breaking one store is a lot easier to recover from than breaking a distribution center that's supporting hundreds of stores itself. Because if you break it, then we're talking real serious money every minute that it's down.
True that. There was a question actually on site surveys. So how do site surveys work in this big of a scale, on a global scale? Do you have a team traveling around doing site surveys or hiring local guys that do it? I think there's like both are used in the industry. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
But
that's
probably
definitely fair to
more
say.
of
I think.
the local ecosystem approach,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and that goes back to the kind of the vendors that we talked about, right? Installation vendors. We lean on them heavily for they go do that installation and then they perform that survey themselves, and then we have yet another third party that's creating the designs originally for us based on our requirements. And then once those designs are created, they get the survey that comes back in. They're the ones actually looking at the survey and grading it, if you will. And if there's something doesn't pass, then they interact with the two third parties interact together to get the coverage to what we expect it to be before the site is considered complete, and we pay them.
Yeah, that's a pretty common methodology as well to have those
Yep. Yep.
feet on the ground locally, and I guess you just need pretty strict standards that everybody has to meet, and everybody has to speak
Documentation
the
is
same
important.
language and stuff
Yep.
like that. NEC 65, and I'm going to talk about this in my Prague presentation too next week, but NEC 65 has to mean NEC 65 for everyone. Everybody has to speak the same language, the same thresholds, the same metrics, things like that. Chair Bear.
Yeah, I thought this question from John was really good. I related to it at least because I've done some of this myself. So I'm curious your thoughts on this, Mark, and maybe how things have changed over the last few years. And .com pickup stuff and everything is extending the Wi-Fi out into, let's say, the parking lot or outdoors from that retail environment. How far do you cover? Do you cover the entire parking lot within so many feet of the store? Do you cover all around the store? What's kind of your thoughts on like extending that Wi-Fi coverage, beyond the four walls?
You're 100% right. You kind of covered most of it right there. But traditionally, what we had before, and again, it depends upon the environment. A store may not be the same as a club. But we tried to provide 360 degrees Wi-Fi outside of the building within like 150 feet, I think is what we have as our guarantee. And so we do that with, APs inside, antennas outside, or perhaps a ruggedized AP out on the wall. But you're right. What's happened here lately with pickup and all that, and delivery is we started with they were close enough. I mean, they're probably like 300 feet, 400 feet, and you can get Wi-Fi at that distance because there's not a lot of obstructions. You got clear line of sight, so it worked. But as they continue to expand those pickup slots and they move further and further away from the building, it is absolutely an active challenge that we are working to solve. We explored lots of different things, including private. Private's great; it would solve the problem, but you have to have the devices to support it, and you have to put SIMs in all those devices, and all those things. So there's some challenges there. So ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're using mesh, the same thing we use in the distribution centers to light up the yard. And we're not trying to cover the entire parking lot. It is focused on really customer parking, which I know sounds kind of like I am saying the same thing, but like sometimes in the back of the store there may be some extended areas out there. We're not going to go put APs on poles out there because it just doesn't make any sense. So we're not trying to light up everywhere, but we are focused on where customers park, especially the big part of the front. Like usually on the sides, there's only a little bit of parking, so we can get that coverage from the building. But we're very intentional, and currently it's being designed site by site, which is not going to scale to 5,000 sites very well. But so yeah, absolutely an active problem we're working to solve.
Yeah.
Very good. Any last questions, Andrew, Jerry, or should we wrap things up and let Mark and the audience?
There was one that just popped up here that I thought was interesting around Starlink. Where does Starlink fit into that? Somebody said that they noticed a Starlink on their local Walmart market. Yeah, where does that fit into this discussion?
Yeah, it's used as backhaul as a failover mechanism when we have problems with the primary fiber.
Yeah,
So
pretty
yeah,
typical.
it's not just that one store. I'll tell you that.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. If you have any further questions, please send them to jerry@hamina.com. No, I'm kidding. Hit us up, any of us. You can find us on LinkedIn as well, under our names, or just Google us and you'll find us. But yeah, happy to connect, happy to chat. Thank you, Mr. Edward. Special thanks. Can we
Yeah, thanks for having me.
a virtual round of applause to Mark? This was
Thank
good.
you.
This was fun. Thanks for making it natural. Thanks for making it very informative and substance-full. So really, really appreciate your expertise, and look forward to chatting with you very much in the future as well as time
Okay.
progresses, as we say.
Great.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mark,
had
so
fun.
much. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Miranda. And talk to you later on the next Hamina webinar, which will happen on beep, beep, beep. I have no idea when it will happen, but we'll figure something out. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.